Hey, folks. It's your boy, the boss of economics, back to drop some truth bombs on the clown show that is our economy. Buckle up, because today we're diving headfirst into the Federal Reserve's latest circus act, starring Jerome Powell as the tightrope walker, Donald Trump as the heckler in the crowd, and you, the hardworking taxpayer, as the poor sap footing the bill for this economic dumpster fire. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Boss Economics World, where we rip the mask off the government's economic mismanagement and shine a spotlight on the policies dragging us straight into recession town, population, all of us. Today, we're dissecting the Federal Reserve's latest meeting, Jerome Powell's hot takes on tariffs and inflation, and the Trump administration's trade policy chaos. Spoiler alert, it's a masterclass in how to tank an economy while pretending you're saving it. Let's break this down, point by point, surface to core, and show you why the Fed, the White House, and their cronies are driving us off a cliff, complete with the latest data, real-world examples, and a healthy dose of satire to keep your blood pressure in check. Let's start with the headlines, shall we? On May 7, 2025, Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell strutted out of his two-day Washington meeting like a man who's just discovered the art of procrastination and called it strategy. His big takeaway: we're not in a hurry to adjust interest rates. Oh, fantastic. Meanwhile, the economy is showing more red flags than a Soviet parade, but Powell's over here sipping decaf, saying, we think we're in the right place to wait and see how things evolve. Really, Jerry? Because the rest of us are seeing inflation creeping up, unemployment risks rising, and businesses hitting the pause button harder than a Netflix binge-watcher dodging spoilers. Now, to be fair, the Fed voted unanimously to keep the federal funds rate locked in at 4.25% to 4.5%, where it's been lounging since December 2024. Powell's reasoning: the cost to waiting is fairly low. Oh, is it now? Tell that to the small business owner who's watching import costs skyrocket thanks to Trump's tariff tantrums, or the average Joe whose grocery bill is ballooning faster than the national debt. But hey, at least the Fed's comfortable keeping rates unchanged until they have a better understanding of where the economy is headed. Translation: we're clueless, so let's just kick the can down the road and hope the economy doesn't implode before our next meeting. Classic government playbook, folks: delay, deflect, and pray the reckoning hits on someone else's watch. Now, let's peel back the layers of this economic onion and get to the juicy stuff. Powell didn't just sit there twiddling his thumbs, he dropped a bombshell about Trump's trade policy, specifically those large increases in tariffs that have been announced. According to Powell, if these tariffs stick around, they're likely to generate a rise in inflation, a slowdown in economic growth, and an increase in unemployment. Gee, you don't say. Who could have predicted that slapping massive taxes on imports would make stuff more expensive, slow down business, and cost jobs? Oh wait, literally every economist worth their salt, that's who. Here's the deal, folks: tariffs are just taxes by another name, and they hit consumers and businesses square in the wallet. Let's break this down with some hard data. According to a 2024 study by the National Bureau of Economic Research, NBR, the Trump administration's earlier tariffs, 2018 to 2019, raised consumer prices by about 0.2% annually and cost American households an average of $800 per year. Fast forward to 2025, and Trump's latest tariff proposals are even more aggressive, targeting everything from Chinese electronics to European cars. The Peterson Institute for International Economics, PIE, estimates that these new tariffs could boost inflation by 0.5% to 1% in 2025 alone, while shaving off 0.3% of GDP growth. And guess what? That's not even the worst part. The PIE also projects that these tariffs could destroy up to 500,000 American jobs by 2026, as businesses grapple with higher costs and reduced competitiveness. But wait, there's more. Powell himself admitted that the inflationary effects of tariffs could be more persistent than a one-time price spike. And why wouldn't they be? When businesses face higher input costs, they don't just eat the loss, they pass it on to you, the consumer. Just look at the latest Consumer Price Index, CPI, data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, BLS. As of April 2025, CPI inflation was already ticking up to 3.8% year-over-year, well above the Fed's 2% target. Now throw in a fresh batch of tariffs, and we're staring down the barrel of 4% plus inflation by Q3 2025, according to Goldman Sachs' latest projections. And let's not forget unemployment. The Fed's own statement on May 7, 2025, warned that the risks of higher unemployment and higher inflation have risen. The labor market might look solid on paper, with 177,000 jobs added in April 2025, but dig into the details, and the cracks are showing. The BLS reported that the unemployment rate ticked up to 4.2% in April 2025, up from 3.9% a year earlier. Meanwhile, job growth in tariff-sensitive sectors like manufacturing and agriculture has flatlined, with the Institute for Supply Management, ISM, reporting that manufacturing activity contracted for the third straight month in April 2025. So, while Powell's busy, waiting and seeing, businesses are already hitting the brakes on hiring and investment, all because of the uncertainty unleashed by Trump's trade war sequel. Now, let's get to the heart of the matter, folks, the real reason we're teetering on the edge of a recession. It's not just tariffs, it's not just inflation, and it's not just Powell's deer-in-the-headlights approach to monetary policy. It's the toxic cocktail of government incompetence, political posturing, and the Fed's refusal to call a spade a spade. First, let's talk about Trump's trade policy. Look, I get it, tariffs sound great on the campaign trail. Protect American jobs. Stick it to China. But in the real world, they're a sledgehammer to the economy's kneecaps. Just look at the data. The U.S. economy contracted in Q1 2025, marking the first GDP decline since 2022, according to the Bureau of Economic Analysis, BEA. And while the Fed's statement tried to spin this as a solid pace of underlying demand, the truth is, businesses and consumers are in panic mode. Companies scrambled to import goods ahead of the tariffs, driving a surge in imports that artificially propped up Q1 GDP. But that's not growth, folks, that's a sugar high, and the crash is coming. Meanwhile, Trump's out here playing armchair economist, screaming that the Fed should lower borrowing costs now. Oh, sure, because nothing screams economic stability like slashing interest rates in the middle of an inflationary tariff war. Trump even went so far as to say, Powell's termination cannot come fast enough. Classy, Don. Real classy. But here's the kicker, Trump's own policies are the ones fueling inflation and economic uncertainty, yet he wants the Fed to clean up his mess by pumping cheap money into the system. It's like setting your house on fire and then yelling at the fire department for not bringing enough marshmallows. And then there's the Fed, which is complicit in this mess by refusing to take decisive action. Powell's wait-and-see approach might sound prudent, but in reality, it's a cop-out. The Fed's dual mandate is to ensure price stability and maximum employment, but right now, it's failing on both fronts. Inflation is climbing, unemployment risks are rising, and businesses are paralyzed by uncertainty. Yet Powell's out here saying, it's not a situation where we can be preemptive. Really? Because the last time I checked, the Fed's job isn't to sit on its hands while the economy burns, it's to act decisively to prevent crises, not just mop up the wreckage afterward. Let's bring this home with some real-world examples, because behind all these numbers are real people getting crushed by this economic mismanagement. Take the case of John Deere, the iconic American manufacturer. In April 2025, the company announced it was laying off 1,000 workers across its U.S. factories, citing rising input costs and declining demand due to tariffs on steel and agricultural exports. Or look at the small business sector. The National Federation of Independent Business, NFIB, reported in May 2025 that 60% of small businesses were delaying investment decisions due to tariff uncertainty, the highest level of caution since the 2008 financial crisis. And then there's the average consumer. Just last week, Walmart announced it was raising prices on tariff-affected goods like electronics and clothing, with CEO John Furner warning that consumers will bear the brunt of these costs. Meanwhile, the average American household is already spending $1,200 more per year on groceries compared to 2021, according to the USDA's Economic Research Service. So, while Powell's busy, waiting and seeing, families are cutting back on essentials, businesses are slashing jobs, and the economy is grinding to a halt. Alright, folks, let's wrap this up before I pop a blood vessel. Here's the bottom line, the Fed's asleep at the wheel, Trump's trade policy is a wrecking ball, and you, the taxpayer, are the one getting flattened. Tariffs are driving up inflation, killing jobs, and tanking growth, while Powell's out here pretending patience is a strategy. Newsflash, Jerry, the economy's not a fine wine, it doesn't get better with age. And Trump, buddy, if you're watching, maybe lay off the tariff tantrums and start listening to actual economists instead of your Twitter echo chamber. So, what's the solution? First, the Fed needs to wake up and start signaling a tighter policy to combat tariff-driven inflation, even if it means short-term pain. Second, the White House needs to scrap this tariff madness and focus on real trade agreements that don't kneecap American businesses and consumers. And third, we, the people, need to hold these clowns accountable before they drive us straight into a recession, or worse. That's all for today, folks. If you're as fed up as I am, smash that like button, subscribe, and share this video with everyone you know. And remember, in a world of economic insanity, you've got the boss of economics to keep it real. Stay sharp, stay skeptical, and I'll see you next time on Boss Economics World.